thank you for joining us for this week's Rise and Thrive with EHG Health, an interactive series where we discuss all things health together. My name is Dr. Seema Sarin. I'm EHG's Medical Director of Lifestyle Medicine and lead our health mentorship program, where we provide beneficiaries with year-round support, guidance, and motivation to develop positive behavior changes based on the principles of lifestyle medicine. By optimizing how we eat, think, and move, we can decrease the risk of chronic disease and promote health, longevity, and productivity. I'm also a subject matter expert in prevention and lifestyle, and am board certified in both internal medicine and lifestyle medicine. It is a great pleasure to be with you all here today to talk about holiday eating. For this episode, I'm joined by Kylie Lebel. Kylie, welcome to Rise and Thrive. We're so happy to have you with us. Please tell
Hi.
us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for having me on today. So like Seema said, my name is Kylie. I'm a registered dietitian based out of Boston, Massachusetts. I work in private practice, and I'm actually part of a larger network of private practice dietitians. We work for a company called Nutrition in Motion, so we're actually located all over the country. But what I do is I just work one-on-one with individuals to help them, figure out their own specific health and nutrition goals and figure out a plan that works for them, that's both manageable, doable, but still in a realistic, healthy approach. So one thing that I love, and one of the biggest reasons why I got into nutrition was, it sounds really silly, but I love food. So I love cooking food, I love eating food, and really just helping people find a way to eat the foods both that are nutritious, but also, the less healthy foods that we think of, especially around the holidays, and how to do that in a way that's mindful and still, healthful.
That's great. And what you're the perfect subject matter expert to talk about mindful eating around the holidays. The holidays can be a difficult time of year, and people can turn to food, and we often do. While not anything is off limits, you can always find healthy alternatives for your holiday favorites. There's several things that that we want to go over today. The first one is about mindful eating and having that conversation. Have you ever eaten a snack because you felt sad or tired or bored or happy? Emotions and feelings are an extremely strong trigger for food choices. And especially over the holidays, that can be exacerbated. So, having cake at your birthday party, drinking alcohol on New Year's Day or New Year's Eve, overindulging on Thanksgiving, even having a tub of ice cream because of a breakup or a hard day, whether we're sad or happy or celebrating, or even lonely, food is often used to support or cope with these emotions or these circumstances. So it's important to be aware of these associations. And instead of continuing with these habits, just retraining ourselves to eat for nourishment and fuel to power through our day. And use our emotions as a check-in to determine, what will best address how I'm feeling. So the next time you eat today, one tip that I like to use is the HALT method. I don't know if you've heard of that. I'm sure, Kylie, you have, is you have to take a moment to ask yourself why you're eating. So thinking about, are you hungry? Are you angry? Are you feeling lonely? Or are you tired? So HALT, hungry, angry, lonely, or tired. So if you find yourself in that circumstance, think about your choices next. So if you're tired, is it time to take a mental break? One of my favorites is to turn on my favorite song or the radio for 30 seconds and just enjoy the music. I like Motown. I like the song My Girl. I can just put it on quickly. It's a 30-second break that kind of gives me a new perspective so I can jump back into things. If you're feeling lonely, maybe it's time to send a funny text or talk to a friend or family member. And if you're hungry, thinking about what snacks that you're choosing, something that'll provide you fuel throughout the day. Oftentimes I talk to my patients about doing the apple test. So you think about, okay, am I hungry? Could I eat an apple right now? And that's a good gauge of saying, yes, I am hungry, and choosing a good healthy snack, like an apple high in fiber and nutrients, versus maybe I'm not that hungry, maybe I'm craving something else. And then going from there.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with that more. And I think it's also really important, whether it's the holiday season or just a random Tuesday, the middle of the week in March, whenever we are eating, to just really be present in the moment. I feel like a lot of people, I myself am definitely guilty of this too, but when we are eating, typically it's in front of the TV or we're scrolling on our phone. So as we're taking bite after bite and eating our meals, we're almost not even tasting our food. We're eating it, but we're not tasting it. And I think there's something to be said to just really sit with your food, look at your plate before you eat it and take the time to appreciate, if this is something you cooked, if it's your favorite food. Really take your time to chew that food, taste the flavors. I think, Seema and I, we had talked about this one time about when you eat a piece of chocolate and just putting it on your tongue, let it melt and really just like taste all the flavors, the smoothness. And I think doing that, not only does it help you appreciate the food you're eating and enjoy it more, but you're also able to say, all right, I feel full and satisfied after this food. I don't necessarily need to get a second piece of pie or whatever it is.
I think that absolutely. Thinking about your mindset is really important too. So I love that idea of, looking at your food and appreciating it. That also helps with, practicing joy and finding happiness is, appreciating the meal that's put in front of you and the taste of the chocolate as it's melting in your mouth, for example. But mindset has a lot of things to, a lot to do with how we sit down and have a meal and eat. And also when we're on diets, something to be mindful of is how we're approaching eating. So some other tips with that would be, avoiding an all or nothing mindset. So for example, you say, I'm not going to eat any sweets tonight. I know it's Christmas Eve and I'm having a big dinner, but I'm not going to do that. And what happens to many of us is that we feel very deprived. So then when we do eat, we overindulge and then we feel guilty about it. Or if you're like, forget about my diet, I don't care. I'm just going to eat whatever I want tonight. There's some inherent risk associated with that too, because that can lead to destructive eating behaviors or habits. So really thinking about what type of mindset you're going in, when you do attend a holiday gathering or having a dinner. Other tips are avoiding skipping meals. So oftentimes, we'll say, oh, I want to, save myself for the holiday dinner tonight, or going out to eat even outside of the holidays, or actually doing takeout now with COVID, with the COVID pandemic. But skipping meals can often lead to overeating when you do finally eat. And then also it can lead to dips in energy and blood sugar throughout the day. So you really want to be aware of your activity levels and your circadian rhythm. So naturally, most people do have a dip in the afternoon where they're feeling low energy and maybe wanting to grab a quick candy bar or something to keep them going, but really being aware of that and saying, hey, I usually have a dip in energy. I'm going to go for a brisk walk during that time, or take a nap, or listen to my favorite music, to really kind of adjust your schedule so you can be productive and present throughout your day. Those are
Yeah.
a couple of other tips. Go ahead.
And I love that you pointed out, not starving yourself throughout the day. I feel like just in the world we live in right now, it's almost idolized to eat less and eat as little as possible. And, I'm sure we're similar in this, like really trying to get away from that mindset and focus more on eating better, not necessarily eating less. So when we're thinking about, the holidays, when we know that, on Christmas or Hanukkah, whatever it is, at the end of the day, it's going to be a little bit heavier, maybe foods we're not used to, focus on nourishment throughout the day rather than avoiding all those foods for the reasons you said. If you're eating throughout the day, you're eating healthful, nutritious options. By the time you get to that meal at night, you're not going to be starving. It'll be a little bit easier to say, oh, I can stop after this first or maybe even second plate of food rather than keep eating and eating. So I think that's really important. I also think, piggybacking off what you said earlier, we put labels on foods a lot. And I feel like we label these foods as good food and bad food, and food that's on limits and food that's off limits. But at the end of the day, I think all foods can really fit in a healthful diet, just depending on the way we're incorporating them in. something I hear a lot is my clients say, oh, I can't even keep Oreos in the house because if I do, I'll eat an entire sleeve in one night. I think it's the idea of getting comfortable with having those Oreos in the house, knowing that you can eat them whenever you want, but how can you eat them in a way that's going to serve your health and nutrition goals? Maybe it's just one Oreo a night, 3 times a week, something like that, and using that principle and applying it into the holidays and your holiday meals.
Those are great, exactly. And depending on what it is, for me, it's Girl Scout cookies. So, definitely realizing and exercising that control is so important as well. What I like to refer to as the 80-20 principle or the 90-10 principle. So that's 80 to 90% of the time you're consistent with your healthy meal plan, and 10 to 20% is reserved for indulgent foods and treats because you don't want to deprive yourself. And another thing that helps my patients and myself and family and friends is the 3-bite rule. So you take that Oreo cookie and you say, I'm going to have an Oreo cookie, but you really take that moment that Kylie, you referred to earlier, is you take that moment really tasting the Oreo cookie, enjoying its taste, it's melting in your mouth, all of that, the work that went into creating that cookie and bringing it to you. And then take a couple more bites. So then you become more satisfied. You're not depriving yourself, but you've lowered your portion size. So that can be a very good strategy in terms of, how to set your parameters. Another few things are adjusting your palate or taste buds. So gradually over the course of several weeks, you can tweak your cooking habits to just include a little less sugar, butter, or salt. And if you do that over time, your taste buds will kind of adjust, and then you'll be able to taste salt a little bit more. And when you're using less, it becomes just that's what the food tastes like, and you can really taste the flavors of what you're seasoning. And looking for recipes that look appetizing to you as well. Since we want to make vegetables and fruit part of healthy eating and part of your meals and snacks, roasting and grilling vegetables, using various herbs and spices to spice them up. There's a great website called Forks Over Knives that has some really great healthy recipes that you can go to. They're all whole food and plant-based. That they're fun to try.
Definitely. And something I tell people, I am a dietitian, but I wasn't always the healthiest eater. Growing up, I had soda pretty regularly. And I love what you said about, decreasing the amount of sugar or salt, whatever you use. When I cut soda out of my life, not that, you necessarily have to cut it out of your life to be healthy, but that was one decision I made for myself. And then I remember I had a soda again, and it was the sweetest thing I had ever tasted just because I had gone so long without it. So I think people often get caught up and say, oh, I have a really bad sweet tooth. I have to have this really sweet thing at the end of the day or whatever it is. And I always encourage, try to go maybe a couple weeks without that food and then reintroduce it, because it is just going to be very, very rich and definitely a little bit of a shock to your palate.
Yes, absolutely. That's so true. And then the first time we do kind of either alternative milks like rice milk and oat milk, almond milks at our house, and skim milk are 1%. But taking a glass of whole milk and having that, with a snack is like, wow, this is like cream. I can't, you really do adjust according to what you normally have, and then you appreciate that new texture or feeling of saltiness or sweetness. The other thing is to determine kind of what foods you like. Are you kind of a crunchy person or a crispy person, a creamy person? Do you like savory things or sweet spicy things? And what kind of seasoning do you gravitate towards? Do you like refreshing foods or more comforting foods? And then determining what that is, and then look at different food varieties and healthy versions. If you like crispy, a crisp carrot chip, for example, would be great. Or if you like creamy, a yogurt parfait, for example, or soup. If you like something a little bit more salty, and you can explore those options that fill the desires you have typically looked into to satiate with a cheat. So instead of reaching for those potato chips, trying something else like some nuts with salt or other spices, if you like savory or spicy foods.
Yeah, and I feel like especially with the holidays and stuff, I really encourage everybody to, define your own healthy and really make healthy your own because it's not going to look the same as your mother, your sister, your neighbor. It's really different for everybody. So when you're looking at your meals, taking into the principles of, finding healthier alternatives, let's say, it's Christmas or Hanukkah and you love the desserts and you can't give up the traditional dessert. You don't necessarily have to, but where in, maybe that holiday meal can you make a healthier option? Or if you love traditional mashed potatoes and you can't, even think about giving up the mashed potatoes, what can you add to it? Like, is it a green salad? Maybe you'll roast some Brussels sprouts along with that. Just kind of, almost compensating in other areas that you're like, oh, maybe I'll try a healthier option here so I can still enjoy the traditional aspect and I don't feel like I'm depriving myself.
That's great. Kylie, I have a question. When you're working with patients, do you or your clients, how do you set, how do you determine goals with them? You mentioned kind of, I saw you, I heard you allude to SMART goals that are specific, measurable, attainable, but can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, the biggest thing I like to focus on is, meeting all my clients where they're at. Sometimes people come in and they're ready to go complete 180, change their life the next day. Other people, it might just be, having another glass of water in the morning, not changing anything else. Just maybe you're going to have one more glass of water a day and slowly kind of finding, where my clients and patients are most comfortable at and where I, as a professional, can see, all right, I notice that you tend to overeat at the end of the day because you're kind of letting yourself go hungry in the morning and kind of, really diving deep into each person and figuring out that person as a whole and where to go from there.
That's great. Exactly. And I think that's the way to make a sustainable change and really look at holistic and your holistic self on how you would like to change. And I find with working with patients and for myself included, as I build these small habits, they kind of lead to bigger and bigger habits. So I used to not really exercise that often, I'll be honest, unfortunately. So I said, you know what, I'm going to just start with walking down the street a little bit, just playing with the kids. Then it felt good. And then I'm like, maybe I should join an exercise class. So, and then it just built upon itself to kind of create more of an active lifestyle. So same thing with eating as well. One thing I wanted to touch upon too was how, during the holiday season when we're hosting, what are some things that we can do to kind of promote healthy eating, nutritious eating, and keep with our health goals when preparing and hosting holiday meals. Preparing traditional holiday dishes with a healthy twist is something. Kylie mentioned mashed potatoes. There's another recipe if you ever get a chance to look up cauliflower mashed potatoes. They're actually pretty delicious and taste sometimes even better in some ways than regular mashed potatoes. The other thing to do is prepare individual serving sizes to ensure appropriate portions. What we like to do instead of doing big pieces of cornbread, having little mini muffins instead, the small ones. So you can take a couple, feel full, but have that individual serving size. When cooking holiday foods, it's very tempting to kind of take bites in between and taste and try.
Guilty.
And what you can do is just have some vegetables on the side. What I like to do is have carrots and celery and maybe some hummus on the side while I'm prepping. So I'm not tempted to have a full huge meal as I'm preparing and then again at dinner. So that's a couple of things to do.
Yeah.
And then if you're planning parties over Zoom, socially distancing and things, planning fun activities for your guests that don't focus on food. So, just like in Thanksgiving, many of us go around and talk about what we're thankful for, but having fun activities, getting some information from guests beforehand and doing some party type games.
Yeah, and something else I do, kind of going back to the portions, and you mentioned portioning things out while you're cooking them. I'm gonna have to try the little mini muffin tins. I've never tried that before. But what I like to do is, I have the kitchen, and then in my family, we eat in the dining room on special holidays. So rather than, bringing all the food to the dining room table and having it in front of you, we serve ourselves in the kitchen. And then when we're sitting at the table eating our meal, we're not staring at, the green bean casserole or whatever it is that's just calling our name. It's almost like the out of sight, out of mind principle.
Oh, that's a great one too. Exactly. Oftentimes, especially during the holidays or at a dinner party, you have a whole kind of smorgasbord of all kinds of food right in front of you, and it's easy to keep going. And that goes along when we used to go out to eat more often. Having appetizers, or even when you eat out, kind of skip the bread, for example. The other ones is, when you have a big meal, purchase to go containers so you can share the tempting leftovers with your guests so everyone can enjoy. But in terms of eating out, what we can do is just check the menu beforehand, staying hydrated, making plan a small healthy snack about 1 or 2 hours before you go out to dinner, so you're not starving and reaching for the first thing that they serve, maybe some chips at a Mexican restaurant, or bread at another one, um, or some little tips to do when you're eating out, or ordering in.
Yeah, and you talked earlier about how you started out going for walks and then started joining an exercise program. I think also too, maybe after the meal, whatever you do, rather than, just being surrounded by food, getting out of the house for a little walk, a little bit of gentle movement, just to kind of make sure that you're really using the food you've eaten for energy and putting that food towards somewhere. I also think it's important, a lot of people I feel like can get tempted to over exercise or push themselves really, really hard, either a couple of days or on the day of leading up to a big holiday. And I think that can kind of mess with people's minds too, and also almost backfire because they think, oh, well, I exercised an extra 20 minutes, so now I can eat an extra piece of pie. And not kind of getting rid of the idea that you have to compensate for the foods you eat, working out and exercising in a way that feels good to you, that's enjoyable, and then just enjoying the meal as you normally would, and tying it back all together with the mindfulness principles that we talked about earlier.
Yes, absolutely. Those are great tips. And keeping in mind your overall goal, really thinking about that 80-20 rule, or some of the other tips that we've discussed, like the HALT method, for example. One last thing I wanted to ask you, Kylie, too, is when you're a guest at a dinner party, how, or a guest at a family get together, what are things that we can do to kind of promote our healthy eating, especially if you're going into maybe everyone's, having fried chicken for dinner or something like that? How best to navigate those situations?
Yeah, from before you even get to the party, and I feel like this works both as the individual and as the host, start by offering to bring something. I mean, the host isn't going to want to prepare the appetizers, the entree, the sides, and the dessert. It's going to be really helpful to, offer something yourself. And then maybe what you bring could be, the salad, the roasted vegetables. Something I love to make, especially at Thanksgiving. I love stuffing. Stuffing is my favorite part of Thanksgiving, but I make a healthier stuffing either using sourdough bread or a whole wheat bread. I just use olive oil instead of butter, tweaking it in my own little way. And so that way I know that even if I'm going to a dinner with really, really heavy food, a lot of, high sugar, high fat desserts, I know that I have those foods in front of me that, I've prepared. I know exactly what goes into it. And then I also think, if, what exactly you're eating is completely out of your control, look at the, spread in front of you, and maybe in your mind think, what are the 3 or 4 things on here that I really, really want? And what are the foods that I could, go home at the end of the night and not really miss too much? And that way, you're not necessarily piling your plate with every single thing on the menu and then feeling really full. Instead, you're able to just enjoy the foods that you know you will enjoy the most.
Yes, those are great tips. Well, what have you found that has been most impactful during in your practice and your experience to kind of keep up with healthy lifestyle tips and healthy, nutritious eating?
Oh gosh, I feel like it really is so different for everybody, but I think just finding a way, going back to the idea that remove the food rules, don't tell yourself that you have to, eat really, really clean and then overindulge when that meal comes. Continue life as you normally would, eat nutritious foods, focus on the nutritious foods, but just like eating one salad can't make you healthy, eating one unhealthy meal won't make you unhealthy either. So find ways to make both feeding your body and nourishing your body, but also feeding your soul and giving your body and your mind the permission to enjoy those foods. Trying to find that balance.
That's great. Yes, exactly. And everything in moderation too. And I love that what you discussed earlier about there are no good and bad foods. There's nothing that's off limits, and really changing our mindsets to really adapt these healthy lifestyle habits. And, just by planning and preparing in advance, all of these events that we do, all of this cooking, all of the holidays can be just part of your healthy lifestyle. Making these healthy choices can include indulging and everything in moderation. And then when you stay on track with your healthy plan most of the time, having those healthy those indulgent foods and treats, they don't just derail you; they just add to the fun and to the holiday spirit, and everything that we want to cultivate during the holidays. Definitely great.
Yeah.
And I know we only have just a few minutes left. Kylie, do you have any concluding remarks, or anything that you want to let our audience here know at EHG Health?
Really, just that, it's been a very, very stressful year just between the pandemic and everything going on. And I think that it's okay if, occasionally you've turned to food, or even in the future are turning to food as that comfort. It's starting to recognize those habits, and maybe in the moment or afterwards, just really paying attention to that and knowing that you're not alone. Tomorrow is a new day. And, both at EHE and myself personally, if you struggle with emotional eating and need a little bit more support, I'm working with clients both in my Boston office, but then also virtually. I do accept most major insurance companies, and I am happy to help anybody just find a plan that's specifically tailored to them to help them with their struggles and their needs. And then if anybody does need any, healthy recipes, I post on my Instagram, Kylie Eats Healthy. It's pretty much just, what I like to define as traditional recipes with healthy twists. Basically everything we've talked about earlier. I'm going to be sharing soon. I made these healthy gingerbread cookies, and talk about struggling with portion control and stuff, because they are absolutely delicious. I'm so excited to share. And I feel like it's a great, Christmas or holiday party dessert to bring that is a little bit healthier, things like that.
Ah, that's great. I'm looking forward. I'm going to join your Instagram account, right now. I think that is wonderful. And the more support we have, the more like-minded individuals get together and share all this great knowledge, the better we'll be, overall. And thank you for those concluding remarks. Definitely, this is a hard time for everyone. 2021 is just around the corner. So I think it's only going to get better from here. But thank you so much, Kylie, for joining us today. I appreciate all of you all for joining us and listening to this episode of Rise and Thrive with EHE. Be sure to tune in next week for another one. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a wonderful afternoon, and happy holidays.